make my way through here. I haven't woken up yet. I haven't even like scratched the surface of my first cup of coffee. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to have to step over this again. Is talk about cross sections. Talk about cross sections and how we sometimes overlook the value of one flat side on a bow and one round side on a bow. First, say an English style longbow, good design in U, round deep belly, and this is the neutral plane. This is that area between tension and compression. And so what we have here is a very wide band of tension and a very narrow, relatively narrow band that's under a compressional load. And what that results in, let me sit down here, it's kind of an uneven distribution of forces between compression and tension, and it works well with you. Now, with this, I was looking at this unstrung last night with very pronounced crown made from small diameter tree. Let's rotate this. And what we have is neutral plane again, wherever it is. It could be, I'm not sure, it's between the two. A narrow crown of tension in a big, wide area of compression. Now, intuitively doesn't always guide us on the correct path, as you shall see in the part 2 of this, is that you would think, if you were to take an exaggerated form of this, let's just take a triangle, turn this into a triangle. You've got a knife edge along there, and so there's not going to be much compression. I don't want to get into the why it's like you think that this is just like a thin band of stuff, so it's not going to do anything, because we have this in our mind sometime that the tensional load goes all the way along the surface, and so what we're doing is we're just like eliminating a lot of that compression, but really works the same way as the English longbow, just in reverse. A U English longbow is that you can have most crowned piece of wood possible, and it still works out that you're going to have a wide section of compression and a very narrow thing of tensional loading wood up there. And so this actually kind of works out for a lot of whitewoods, which are a little tension strong and compression weak. That this is a very, very good style of bow, and why I started thinking about this, why crowns are good, and some people decrown it, just take that neutral plane line, do that to flatten the top, because we have in our mind sometimes that the perfect cross section for a bow, which works out well with laminated bows, it's a whole different animal. With self bows, it's a rectangular cross section because you have nice even tension, you have a nice even compression, regardless of the fact that bows are stronger in one than the other. And so, there we go. And why did I start overthinking that right there? It's because when I unstring this one, after tailoring and shooting, boom, it's like miraculously dead straight. You would think that you would have some string follow, you know, weird causation or effects or whatever, with a very rounded back. You know, it works out that no, having a crown back and overloading the tensional strong wood, stronger in tension than compression, is a good thing. So this really is an optimal, say, cross section. Now on to being a troublemaker. So I'm looking at this bow, and I've got the measurements, measured by Callahan, thickness and the shape. And as I'm working on this, I'm thinking, okay, I take it for granted that I'm reading in this book measurements taken by somebody that studied this bow, that it's going to miraculously, and I don't know how, what function of like bow magic is going to cause it to then be what we consider a Mollegabet, you know, bending here and then stiff tips. It just didn't work out. I'm thinking in my mind, this can't work out by these measurements. It could be stiffish in the last 20 centimeters, which also includes this bit right here that doesn't stick out. And if you look at the picture in the Boyer's Bible, and I'll show it, it's rather long, so it's in here. And so the last 20 centimeters, including that tip, yes, the measurements suggest that it's going to be a stiffish tip. But nothing in those measurements as I'm doing it suggests that it's going to have this miraculously, I keep using that word too much, not enough coffee, huge amount of bend here and then stiff. And the reason why I've got this in my mind is this division between Holmegaard bows and Mollegabet bows. This is what we would think of in a Mollegabet bow. We've seen them. Now I tend to have a little bit more bent middle end than a lot of people do, just right here. I think this makes a more stable, snappy bow. When you bend it, you know, if you were to sight it, the bend starts here. And so it's not just hingy here. But this is what you picture Mollegabet bow. Is that all the bend somewhere in here, to whatever degree. And then thickish tips right here that are exaggeratedly narrowed. Just look, Mollegabet bow, YouTube, Mollegabet, whatever. You're going to see, whoa, this is what they are. And I am going to be a heretic here. I'm going to be a troublemaker. I question the leap from the bow in the Boyer's Bible to this. Where did this come from? What was ground zero for Mollegabet bows? Who actually used these bows? I saw a YouTube video, a person was making a Viking bow, and he had not as wide a limb as here, but it was this, where there was a definite constriction, maybe a little further in, and it was thick. I wonder if ground zero was, no, let me just show you this thing. You know, this is the original, and then on the next page, lessons learned from a 9,000-year-old bow. And this is, if you can see, more like my bow. And this, my friends, could be ground zero for what people consider a Mollegabet bow. That second one was an interpretation, a modern interpretation, lessons learned from this one. Somehow, it went from this, is that in the shot? That has basically, you know, bends throughout almost entire length to this. I don't see how this came to this. Explain why. This might be an artificial kind of a thing somebody came up with. I really want to find out where that came from. This, kind of a modern style tiller. And if I was to take that picture of the Holmegaard bow, where did I put my butt, and take just the straight edge, and you can't see it, and just kind of follow along the picture of that bow, you're going to see that the last 20 centimeters really don't bend too much, but that includes this tip thing here, so it would be somewhere in here where it stiffens out, but the rest of it is all bending. It's funny, last night I had this incredible, it was a nightmare, but it was a great nightmare. I dreamt that I was at my aunt and uncle's house with my sister, and there's these 4 little kids there I didn't know, and my aunt and my uncle I didn't know. You know how dreams work. And it's right on the edge of an ocean. And then suddenly, storm warning. There's a huge storm and all these ships are blowing, and I'm looking out this picture window facing the water, and these huge ships are like coming at the house and then being blown on the shore and hitting the neighbors' houses and taking out one house, and like I'm grabbing these little kids, put your shoes on, get your jacket on, because we need to be able to run if we see a giant ship going to hit the house. And there was this one dopey little girl that was like, I don't want to, and I'm like, fine, let a ship hit you. And I went into the other part of the house, and I'm trying to put my boots on, and the laces turned into like rawhide, wet rawhide, and I couldn't do it, and it cut like the laces off, and I was going to put new boot laces on, and I woke up. My wife was awake, she was reading, and said, "You just got a text, put your phone on silent." So I read it, and it was from a fellow in Florida. It said, "How do you know that the original bows didn't have tips that bent?" And it was like, God, that's simple. Because I wound up measuring this thing, rounding it, so, you know, it was a scientific recreation of a bow, and it came out like this. It's like, why am I thinking about taking my template and adding quite a lot of thickness in here to get what people think these things look like? Let it be what it is. And so, in conclusion, I'm sure I'm going to get some ire on this if it spreads beyond my regular viewership, but really, everyone that's good at measuring and carving, or carving wood, you don't really carve bows, take the measurements in the traditional Boyer's Bibles and faithfully and precisely reproduce that artifact with the measurements that he stated. You're going to find the same thing I found, I bet. That bow had limbs that bent basically throughout that entire length, which begs the question, where exactly did the Mollegabet bow come from? Because it didn't come from this. That's it. Enough talking. I'm going to finish my coffee and work on bows.